The Prime Minister is addressing a nation in crisis. We heard in recent months about the crisis in Afghanistan, but the crises that tend to bite hardest are the crises that affect people very directly and very immediately. And we're in a situation at the moment where people can't put fuel in their cars, they can't get on with their jobs, they can't visit family and friends, and in some cases there are also shortages of food. So Boris is going to have to address that, and he's going to have to give a vision to the country that I think explains why we are in that situation in a coherent way, gives a vision to get out of that, and I think a broader vision to move past the pandemic, and also to set a differentiation in Britain's position in the world post-Brexit in terms of the kind of country we're going to be and the sort of position we are going to seek for ourselves in the world. So despite the fact that we are probably 2 or 3 conferences away from the next general election, it so happens that this conference is occurring at a bit of a crux moment, and Boris has an opportunity to settle the country and to present his vision, but also an opportunity to, I think, do a bad job and make things even worse.
It's a crux moment, as you say, and interesting you mentioned the place in the electoral cycle. And we were talking yesterday about the latest YouGov polls that have the Conservatives 8 percentage points ahead of Labour. Incredibly unusual at this stage in the electoral cycle, especially given the backdrop of all the things that you've just outlined. Is this testament to Boris Johnson and that sort of characteristic ebullience that we're likely to see on Wednesday? I mean, he used to, didn't he, always be such a star at the Conservative conference that it was almost an embarrassment how to make sure he didn't outperform David Cameron or whoever the Prime Minister of the day was. But he does have this ability, doesn't he, to really capture popularity in spite of all the troubles that we're facing.
Well, I think you've got several factors at play here. The Bow Group didn't support Boris Johnson's candidacy for leadership because we felt that he was not all the things that he was claiming to be. And I think that's become apparent now. And what I'm seeing and hearing in the Conservative movement is a huge amount of dissatisfaction. But set against that, you've got the Labour Party. And if you took the time to watch the events of the Labour Party conference last week, I think you should be under no illusions as to why the Conservatives are so far ahead in the polls. They present no vision, they present no clarity, they present no unity. They're talking about whether women have cervixes or not. I mean, it's an absolute farce. And so under those circumstances, Boris, as he has always been throughout his career, is extremely fortunate. But what you say is true. Boris is a phenomenal politician, a phenomenal performer. You compare him to Theresa May and David Cameron, and as you say, he completely beats them out the room. And so he has what it takes, I think, to win the country over with a speech and to present a vision. I don't trust Boris Johnson. I don't think he's going to move this country in a patriotic Conservative direction, which is what I want, and I think the majority of Brexit voters want. But I do think he is a phenomenal politician, and I think that he has the opportunity and the skills to cement that lead against Labour, considering where the Labour Party is at the moment.
Ben, as you say, the UK is in a time of crisis right now. We've got prices soaring, we've got petrol stations, they're running dry, we've got empty supermarket shelves, we've got fruit and veg rotting in the fields. There was an opinion poll out last night that said 69% of people think the government has responded badly to the HGV driver shortage. How is Boris Johnson, and will Boris Johnson, persuade people that he's in control with a speech on Wednesday? Is that going to be enough?
Well, you may remember the fuel crisis that occurred under the Blair government, 2004, I believe it was. And I think in many ways that's when Blair started to lose his Teflon Tony status. Before that, no one could touch Blair. People were saying the Conservatives will never be in power again. This guy's a superstar. Many of the things that are being said about Boris Johnson. But when that happened, there were fights on petrol forecourts, just like there is now. People weren't able to do their jobs. And most people in this country, I don't think, are that interested in politics. But when those sorts of issues come up, they get interested. And that could well be a point, where Boris's popularity starts to decline. And so, as I say, he's going to have to, rather than just platitudes and, it'll all be all right in broad sunlit uplands, I think he's going to have to set out quite a clear strategy to the country. And to some extent, he's begun the narrative on that by bringing the military in as support. There's talk of financial support, and I think measures in the future to prevent this sort of thing from happening again, because there's every danger that this might be one blip, and then in another few months we have another blip. And part of that is down to mismanagement, not just on fuel and HGV drivers, but also in things like our gas reserves, which are far, far below most other developed nations. Boris, he is, as I say, a great politician, but he's not known for his planning. He's not known for his attention to detail, and I think that's what he needs to present to the country, because people are used to the waffle and the jokes and the funny speeches. But this is quite a serious moment, and I think he needs to sort of set people's minds at rest that this is going to be all right. Christmas is going to be all right, and things are going to get back to normal, and this is how we're going to do it. So again, lots to cover in the conference, and I think a lot of people are very, very unhappy with Boris. They might not be voting for Labour, but they're not satisfied with this government, and I'm certainly one of them. And so he's going to have to go a long way, I think, to convince people.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting. You say, as you say, the Bow Group aren't supportive of him. There are Conservatives who aren't supportive of him. And, of course, there are those red wall voters who famously lent him their vote, who will be looking at him raising taxes, cutting benefits that are going to disproportionately affect the poor, and be wondering whether or not he really is a Prime Minister for them.
Yeah, well, look, the Bow Group was a part of the Brexit movement and was for a long time. And we campaigned for many years against the Conservative Party, against people like David Cameron, against Theresa May with her proposed deal. And we weren't satisfied with Boris's deal either. And we raised issues like the Northern Irish Protocol, which have now come to a head. But I think a lot of people have misread the 2019 general election. Firstly, I don't think Corbyn, and we're finding this out with Keir Starmer's leadership, was quite as bad as people thought in terms of winning people over. But the main point was Brexit. Labour got it completely wrong on Brexit. The Conservative Party got most of it wrong on Brexit, but realised at the last minute that there was a huge electoral opportunity if they threw their arms around Brexit, which Boris did, both in the campaign and then with the vision he presented in 2019. And the third point was Nigel Farage stepped down. And what I'm seeing, particularly among young Conservative groups, of which there are many, there's going to be a lot of young people at this Conservative Party conference, that usually forms quite a sizable proportion of the attendees, is a desire to actually see the Conservative majority reduce, not because they want to see Labour in power, but because there is this belief, and I've heard it discussed on GBNews as well, that a modern Conservative Party with an 80-seat majority is not a good thing, because there's no one to hold the government to account. They can romp away with any policies that very soon afterwards proved to be disastrous. And when Theresa May was in power, for example, I think there was a lot more scrutiny and there was a lot more need for her to convince people. And I think if Nigel Farage had stood in all of those seats with the Brexit Party, the Conservative Party probably would have won about a 40-seat majority, and I think that would have been a better settlement. So we're in this curious situation where people don't want Labour, but they're not enthused by the Conservative Party either. And I think there will be a lot of machinations within the Conservative Party, because a lot of people, I think, view the Conservative Party as a monolith, but it isn't. There are lots of different parts of the Conservative Party. It's often been said there are two wings of the Conservative Party and they agree on almost nothing. So I think you're going to see more of that, more disagreement within the Conservative Party, and Boris placed under pressure in new ways. And I think it's, as I say, it's very important he is placed under pressure and placed under scrutiny, because at the moment, because of the disastrous result of the Labour Party right now, there isn't really anyone holding the government to account.
Welcome to the GB News YouTube channel. You can watch us live 24 hours a day, catch up on your favourite shows and join in the conversation in the comments below.
Don't forget to subscribe and you'll never miss any of our exclusive content.